This is the X-Zone Broadcast Network, broadcasting worldwide on broadcast affiliates and satellite program providers, including CNN Broadcast Network, Sirius Satellite Network, Star Media, Good News Radio Network, Angel Broadcast Network, Wiki Broadcast Network, and WPBN TV. For more information on the X-Zone Broadcast Network, visit us at www.xzbn.net.
Did you know that when you're on the road with limited data or Wi-Fi, you can still listen to the X-Zone Radio Show with Rob McConnell, The Science of Magic with Gwilda Wiyaka, X-1, Dimension X, Space Patrol, and every minute of the X-Zone Broadcast Network by calling 213-401-0080, courtesy of Audio Now. No smartphone, app, or internet needed. It saves your data plan, and it's free if you have unlimited minutes. Call 213-401-0080 to listen on any phone, anytime, anywhere. Remember, 213-401-0080 for the best of the paranormal, parapsychology, and sci-fi radio programming anywhere, 24/7, 365. This is A Different Perspective with Kevin Randle. A retired U.S. Lieutenant Colonel, Kevin Randle has been studying UFOs for nearly 50 years. Kevin has investigated some of the most famous UFO cases in the world and has been consulted for dozens of documentaries about UFOs. Considered one of the leading experts into the Roswell UFO crash of 1947, Kevin has written more than 25 books about UFOs, including the recently published Roswell in the 21st Century. Now, here's the host of A Different Perspective, Kevin Randle.
And good evening. I just listened to that whole introduction myself for the first time and realized it dates me. It suggests I've been studying UFOs for 50 years, which must mean I'm like 107 or something. I'm really only 25 for those of you who really want to know. Anyway, I will be joined tonight by Rob SWIATEK, who has an undergraduate degree in physics and spent his career at the U.S. Patent and Trademark Office working on intellectual property in a number of areas, most importantly in aeronautics and astronautics, which means he was working on circular aircraft for the U.S. government. I'm going to say USO for some reason. His UFO involvement goes back to 1968 during what he calls his larval stage, when there were ongoing sightings throughout the country, and the University of Colorado UFO study permanently nailed his attention. Once he arrived in the Washington, D.C. area with the PTO, he joined the Fund for UFO Research and subsequently was elected to their executive committee. Around 2006, as the fund wound down due to the rise of the internet and other factors, although it still exists as an organization, but it's largely dormant, he was asked to join the MUFON board of directors and continue to serve there to this day. So he is well-rounded in the study of UFOs. He's been around the study almost as long as I have, which means he knows an awful lot about UFOs. At least we hope so. So welcome, Rob.
Hi, Kevin. Thank you for having me on the show. It's a pleasure to be here on the 75th anniversary of Pearl Harbor and to be talking about UFOs with you. And if you've been around for 107 years, I guess I've been around for 105. So that's kind of sobering.
Yes, that's frightening when I look back and realize, I was there to actually witness on television the announcement of the Lonnie Zamora sighting, for example. And I remember I was growing up in Colorado when they announced the University of Colorado was doing the UFO study. I was very excited about that, which did me no good because not long after their announcement, I graduated from high school, which again dates me, and ended up in the U.S. Army. So I didn't have the opportunity to interact with them at all like I would have. So that kind of dates me on that. But you have a strong interest in ufology that goes back as long as I do. What really sparked your interest besides the University of Colorado study? What site was there a sighting that kind of sparked it, or something you saw?
There wasn't, there wasn't, Kevin. There wasn't a particular sighting or anything like that. I'm a little embarrassed to say this, but I know I'm in good company with a lot of other people in the UFO field, whose names I won't mention at this point. But one of the first things I read in the field was the famous George Adamski book, "Flying Saucers Have Landed," and that was somewhat before 1968 that I read that. And that kind of stuff started piquing my interest, actually. And then I got a little clearer perspective on what was going on, and I was no less excited by reports of stuff in the sky that couldn't be explained. In fact, I was flabbergasted, to be honest with you.
Well, I can say with good conscience, my first book that I read about UFOs was Strangers in the Sky by Brad Steiger, which was a compendium of UFO sightings, not a contactee document. So I win on that one, I think, if we were having a contest, I suppose.
Yeah, you're right. Well, Brad Steiger's still around, and he's still writing, and he's a pretty good researcher.
He is, yes. He just moved to Iowa. So for those of you who are wondering where he is, he's, I guess, in his 80s now, and still producing all kinds of material. So, and I always kind of liked his research philosophy, which was he was going to accept what you told him as the truth until he found reasons not to believe you anymore. And I think, as a researcher, I always kind of bothered a little bit by that, because I think, you need to look at everything with a very skeptical eye. But he was, I guess, less skeptical from his point of view, and it works just well for him. My first contact with him was on a sighting, a disappearance that took place in Wales in 1909, and I actually knew where he lived and how to contact him. So I called him and asked him about it, and he said, "Oh, don't worry about that case; it's a hoax." And from there, we kind of developed a keen relationship, and went on from that. We're going to have. I realize I've now talked for most of this segment, but we're going to have to take a quick break. For more information about the things we talk about, take a look at www.kevinrandle.blogspot.com. And for those of you interested in Roswell, I've just published a few weeks ago, the Roswell in the 21st Century. It gives you a compendium of that. So we will be right back with Rob SWIATEK in just a moment.
This is Johanna Carroll, host of Dialogue with Divinity on the X-Zone Broadcast Network. While walking along Kaanapali Beach in Maui this past year, I kept discovering all these shells and coral in the shape of hearts. My dialogue with Divinity was very simple. Do you want me to do a retreat to heal people's hearts in Maui next year? And of course, the answer was yes. As a master spiritual teacher, I am offering you a neat retreat called Rise, May 8th through the 12th, 2017, and the chance of a lifetime to rest at a 5-star resort for 5 days and experience a spiritual renewal of your heart and soul. Kaanapali is one of the top 5 beaches in the world. This stunning resort has undergone a $40 million renovation. I walked the entire property, checked out the room choices on your behalf, and I must say it is stunning. Our conference room faces the ocean with sliding glass doors. Maui is known as Mother Maui because it is a soft, gentle, healing energy. In the embrace of Mother Maui, you will feel yourself rising from the limitations of an ordinary life to an extraordinary journey of peace, bliss, and harmony. A greater sense of clarity. Our Rise retreat ignites renewal in the sacred elements of air, water, earth, fire, and wind. There's plenty of free time to enjoy all that Maui has to offer. A small deposit is required now to reserve your space, as this retreat, it will sell out. For more details, please go to johannacarroll.com and register today. Aloha, and I'll see you in mystical Maui.
How would you like to be able to read other people's minds? Well, the next best thing is here. When you know how to read a person's name, you know how the person thinks, feels, and behaves. Each letter in our name holds a key to unlock our true essence. Our name contains both our gifts and challenges in this lifetime. Mnemology science discovers personality secrets hidden in the placement of the letters of our names, including the first and last impression people remember about us. Sharon shows us how to interpret the arrangement of letters as outlined in her book, Know the Name, Know the Person. Sharon Lynn Wyeth created mnemology science after 18 years of research and testing her theories, and has supported thousands of people around the world in understanding themselves and others better. You'll enjoy Sharon's unique teachings as she shares her system to learn the gifts behind your given birth name. Even if you don't like your birth name, there are jewels in this book. If you're thinking of changing your name, ready to name your child, or wanting to get along better with others, this is the book for you. If you'd like to improve your relationships and change your life for the better, get the book today, Know the Name, Know the Person, or visit www.knowthename.com. That's www.knowthename.com.
And we are back with Rob SWIATEK, who has been in ufology forever and has worked on flying saucers for the U.S. government. I cannot get that out today. I thought that was kind of clever that your job kind of puts you in touch with flying saucers for the U.S. government. So I thought I'd beat that to death if I possibly could.
Yeah, it's really ironic.
Do you have a favorite UFO sighting, something that really got you worked up?
Well, like you, it's just some of the bigger ones that I heard of. At the time I first sort of slid into ufology, the Exeter, some of the Exeter sightings had just passed. I guess they occurred in '65. So John Fuller's book was out, and I was very impressed by that and the Exeter series of sightings. And there weren't any particularly huge sightings that I knew of at that time in 1968, but that's certainly one of them that I puzzled a great deal over. That series of sightings out there in New Hampshire, and
could you give us
to this day I'm still puzzled.
Well, give us a bit of a description of these Exeter sightings.
Well, the main Exeter sighting was by a fellow named Muscarello, and I think it occurred around September 3rd or something, 1965, and he was coming in from, I think, Army service or something like that. But anyhow, he saw a rather large discoidal object with lights on it hovering over a farmhouse or near a farmhouse there in the middle of the night at midnight or something like that on that date, and was tremendously frightened by it. And ultimately, he got in contact with the police, and they arrived back out at the location of the sighting. Maybe that had occurred 45 minutes before that now, and then it reoccurred, and both the officer, one officer I guess it was, and Muscarello, saw this again, had a CE1 encounter of something very close by and lit up, and they couldn't explain it.
Well, by CE1 you mean a close encounter of the first kind, which is basically seeing a craft close at hand, not on the ground, not occupants from it, but close at hand.
Right. Yeah, I should have defined my terms there. But yeah, you're 100% correct, Kevin.
Philip Glass suggested that because there were high tension lines in the area, that some of these sightings were caused by an ionization of the atmosphere. You've got a degree in physics. What did you think of Glass's explanation for those sightings?
Well, yeah, I can't say I've done my own research on plasma and all this kind of stuff, but I have read quite a bit about the Glass's explanations and the rebuttal to it by Dr. James McDonald, who, as you know, was an atmospheric physicist, no longer alive, but he was pretty active in the early 70s and late 60s. He looked very closely at Glass's theories and found them basically groundless. He couldn't account for how either the tension lines could produce a plasma that would say hover shortly above the ground, and exhibit strange light phenomena, beams of light, and take off quickly and move back and forth. And he just basically canned his explanations as having any relevance to reality. It's not to say that plasmas don't exist. Plasma is a pretty common form that energy takes. A candle flame is a type of a plasma, for example. But they don't move around in an intelligent manner like an aircraft and hover and make movements in response to what a human might do.
Well, so, Philip Glass and Dr. McDonald had quite a contentious relationship. I think that Glass resented McDonald crushing his ionization of the atmosphere theory as quickly as he did.
Well, yeah, McDonald knew what he was talking about, at least when it came to that aspect of physics.
And Philip Glass was a writer for the Aviation Week in Space Technology. I think he had a degree in engineering, but that's certainly not the same as having physics and understanding plasma physics. So,
yeah, that's correct. He was a pretty smart guy in his own way, but no, he didn't have the requisite knowledge to be going about saying that UFOs, a lot of them were due to plasmas hovering outside power lines. And in recent years here, we've had sort of had that explanation reprised when the British government came out with this thing called the Condign Report, or Project Condign, here about 10 years ago, wherein the writer, who's never been named, came to the same conclusion as Class, basically that all unexplained UFOs, or many of them, could be explained as plasmas that were flying around, following airplanes, and he even tried to explain abductions with plasmas. So I think he should have gone back and read his James McDonald's writings. He would not have come to that conclusion.
Well, I was looking at a case that had a plasma involved in it, and I called a plasma physicist at the University of Nebraska because I knew him and talked to him about it. And suddenly it dawned on me what he was trying to say was that the plasmas, while there are a lot of plasmas in the atmosphere, they don't normally glow. And there has to be some mechanism in the atmosphere, or some mechanism that causes them to glow. And that was why I think the idea that the Exeter sightings, for example, were close to high tension lines. That was a mechanism. The electricity that would escape as it moved along the power lines would be enough to excite the plasmas that cause them to glow. But he didn't seem to think that was a very viable explanation. So.
Yeah, and the Muscarello sighting, as I recall, which was sort of the one that kicked off everything. I think a couple sightings actually occurred. Subsequently, they found out they occurred a little bit before Muscarello. But his actual sighting, I don't think it actually involved any nearby power lines. It was sort of over a farmhouse, and the thing went away, and then it came back, that type thing. But several of the subsequent reports did come from objects that seemed to be hovering above or near power lines. No doubt about that.
And then that's a sighting that goes back to 1965, so we're 50 years in the past here. And I noticed in some of the information I had that you work with MUFON, and they're got what they call the CMS system, and they get a lot of sightings. Is there the same kind of robust sightings in the MUFON catalogs that we see that we used to get, or are they just sort of lights in the sky and that sort of thing?
No, the subject is still pretty robust, Kevin, and I'm glad you brought that up, because I did a little bit of research here to present some pretty up-to-date information to you on sightings that come in on MUFON's case management system. We call it the CMS. And real quickly here, let me just summarize how many cases they've received through. My cutoff date was November 30th of 2016, and the initial date was January 1st of 2016. So in that 11 months, MUFON received a little bit over 3,800 sightings, 3,800 sightings. These are sightings that were alleged to have occurred this year, not sightings that were reported in 2016, but that occurred in some earlier year. So 3,800 sightings in 2016, and of those that have been worked on, they have a total of 950 unknown sightings that account for almost 25% of the total is unknown sightings. Many remain yet to be worked on. But yeah, the cases run the gamut of all the kind of cases we know and love from the beginning of UFO history, modern history, 1947, with the exception of, and this is an interesting topic that we could probably spend 3 or 4 shows talking about, there are really not very many CE3 cases where you get a close-up sighting of an object that involves an entity or an occupant. Or we don't have many car-stopping cases that would fall under the CE2 category, where an object comes close by a car and interrupts the engine or interrupts the power going to a home or a building or something like that. They do occur a little bit, but I'd say the traditional CE3s are almost completely absent from all the sightings that have been coming in. I checked today, shortly before the show, to see how many CE3s MUFON had picked up this year, and there were just a handful of them. And when I read the actual accounts of some of the cases, I wouldn't have called some of them CE3s. Some of them were bedroom encounters that might have been an abduction type thing, but there were not any sightings that I read that involved an actual object and an entity or what appeared to be a living being. So there you have it. And the sightings come from all the states. Yeah.
That's kind of interesting, because I know the more exciting cases are those where you see something, see a creature, see an entity, see an alien with it. And if we're not, you're saying in 2016 there really isn't a good CE3 case where the people saw entities?
I couldn't find one, Kevin, and I went through the thing. There were a lot of cases that initially received the CE3 label, but they were subsequently found to be hoaxes, or there just was not enough information for the investigator to work with to come to any conclusion. And in only a handful of cases did they deem that the case was an unknown. And those are the ones I sort of looked at. And like I say, I just didn't find anywhere. I walked outside of my house in the early morning, and there was something in the field across the street, and some small being was tinkering around what appeared to be a craft on a tripod landing gear. Nothing like that. They were just a little more nebulous than that.
CE2 cases, things on the ground. Were there a lot of those kind of cases? More of those kind of cases? Fewer? What's the deal with those?
Yeah, well, there are more of them, depending on how you want to define your CE2. But many cases have, as you would expect, photographs associated with them. So that's kind of an interaction of the UFO with the witness. I mean, photons reflected off the UFO were picked up by the camera. So the MUFON CMS system labels photographic cases as CE2s. But leaving out those kind of things, I can't say that we have. I didn't run across any car stoppage cases. I didn't look specifically in the file for that, to be honest with you. But I've had to go over this file twice here in recent months. Once for a talk I gave in November, I guess, or in October, and I didn't come across anywhere a car was stopped. There might have been a few where the power supply was interrupted to a house or something like that, but they again are very rare.
And see, this kind of what proves the point that I was trying to make, is we're not getting the robust kind of cases, because you look at the Levelland sightings from 1957, you've got a lot of car stopping cases associated with that, not only in the Levelland, Texas area on November 2nd, but you've got other cases like that. You've got some from New Mexico the next day. The craft are burning people unintentionally, like standing in front of the sun lamp too long or something like that. And so you've got that kind of cases. In 1973, we had a period of about 6 weeks where there were an awful lot of cases of the craft on the ground and the beings associated with the craft being seen in that 6 week period. But now you don't really have that kind of thing.
No, that was the heyday or maybe that was the curtain call for those kind of cases. It's not to say they haven't occurred in the intervening years from the mid-'70s to now, but the drop-off of the curve has been rather extreme. And one of the things I like to do, and if we have time in any of the segments here, I can go over a couple of these cases. But what I'm relegated to, or what an investigator is relegated to, if they want to look at these 3,800 cases that have come into MUFON, are cases where the witness was very close to the object that they described. And of those cases, there are quite a few. And there's some pretty good ones in there where it's beyond a doubt that either the person saw an unusual object that was not man-made, or they were just complete liars. And those are the only two options you have, because the object was within, say, 50 feet of them or 25 feet of them, and exhibited unusual shapes and unusual behavior, and left the witness in a couple instances here of 2016 cases really traumatized and extremely upset and disturbed, and that comes across in the account. So I find that very interesting in its grist for a scientific mill, and I'm not going to let anybody off the hook on saying and this does not include you because you're not alleging this, but a lot of people are going to dismiss the UFO subject because there aren't any cases where they leave crushed vegetation anymore or affect a car or maybe creatures are seen. But no, there's a lot of cases where they're close.
I'm going to have to break in here because we're going to have to take a break, and I realize I'm really up against it on this one. So we will be back right after this.
While science pursues fact, magic accesses the quantum level, bridging random facts to form truth. As long as science and magic remain separate and polarized, the truth cannot be known. I'm Gwilda Wiyaka. Join me on the Science of Magic radio program, dedicated to unification and evolution of consciousness. During each episode, I'll be speaking with experienced and respected scientists and mystics. From astrologers to astronomers, from medical doctors to shaman, the scientific method to dowsing and intuition, we'll weave together information from seemingly divergent practices to promote unity and enlightenment. Join me, Gwilda Wiyaka, and the Science of Magic right here on the Mutual Broadcast Network. For more information, visit www.thescienceofmagic.net.
Gibbs A. Williams, Ph.D., is a practicing psychoanalyst, supervisor, researcher, and author in New York City. Much of his life has been dedicated to understanding nature and the uses of meaningful coincidences or synchronicities. His radical and original non-Jungian, non-mystical, non-magical theory of synchronicities illuminates much of the fog surrounding this challenging and perplexing topic. His ideas and manners are fresh, presented in a style that is both entertaining and highly informative. He is also an expert on crisis intervention, specially focused on violence reduction for the police and citizens, mastering anxiety, frustration, and stress without the use of medication, and effectively preventing and treating heroin addiction. Dr. Williams can be contacted at his email address at gwwilliamsny11@aol.com or visit his website at...
Wouldn't you love to know the secret to everything? Well then, meet Dr. Kimberly McGeorge and her cutting-edge breakthrough knowledge that combines science with possibility. Dr. Kimberly brings real-life answers and healing to those open to alternative solutions. She teaches solution-based programs and classes that will change all areas of your life forever. Specializing in conscious creation, intuitive readings, and energy medicine, you can rapidly shift health, relationships, business, and money and abundance challenges quickly. Receive her best-selling book, Secret to Everything, at no cost by going to secrettoeverything.com/X-Zone. That's right, transformation can start now. Just go to secrettoeverything.com/X-Zone and receive Dr. Kimberly's book for free.
Afterlife expert Roberta Grimes was the first one to say that dying can be fun. Now her best-selling book, The Fun of Dying, is available in stores worldwide. So if you wonder whether death ends life, how it feels to die, or what heaven might be like, The Fun of Dying was written for you. And if you have always been afraid of death, or if you worry that your life has no meaning, let The Fun of Dying ease your fears and bring new meaning to your life. Nothing said in The Fun of Dying is based on the teachings of any religion. Instead, Roberta draws on evidence to explain how death happens, how it feels, and what comes next. A lot of the best death-related evidence was produced in the first half of the 20th century. When it is put together with recent discoveries, it tells a consistent and amazing story. Roberta Grimes blogs and answers questions at robertagrimes.com. Her wonderful book, The Fun of Dying.
And we are back once again with Rob SWIATEK of the MUFON now, I guess, and formerly of the Fund for UFO Research, which is dormant. And before we went away, we were talking about some of the better cases, I guess, from 2016, and wondering if there was some where people saw the thing on the ground, some good cases where they were close. And you said that you had a couple of those lined up for us. So can you give us some of the details?
Yeah, I do, Kevin. And anybody who isn't convinced that there's anything to the UFO subject needs to look into these kind of cases. The first one I wanted to just kind of briefly describe occurred in January 14th of this year, and it's a radar visual sighting. In this case, it was an Airbus 321 passenger aircraft, which was going from San Francisco to Philadelphia, and the pilot radioed into the control center, and he was over a place called Levan, Utah, Levan, Utah. The pilot wondered what the large orange square was that he could see off the nose of his aircraft. And at first, the control center said they weren't picking it up on radar. This turned out to be a lie. And subsequently... Wait a
minute. Why do you say this is a lie?
Yeah, because when there's a little bit of a backstory here, and maybe I shouldn't have used this case because it's a little complicated. But basically, when the pilot radioed into the control center asking what the orange object was and whether they had it on radar, the control center said, no, we're not tracking that thing. Some minutes later, i.e. 10 minutes later, and this whole conversation was heard by a ham radio operator on the ground. And the pilot again asked what he was seeing off the nose of his aircraft, and the air traffic control center said something like, "Wow, is it on the right side of your aircraft?" Well, now the pilot never said it was on the right side, but it turned out to be. And this conversation was picked up by this ham radio operator, who subsequently got in touch with MUFON, and the MUFON investigator, in conjunction with a radar expert that MUFON retains, requested the records from the FAA. So we got a little bit of the recording between the pilot and the air traffic control center, and we got the radar tapes. And
well, this thing concerns me greatly because if you've got an object in the air around the airliner, part of the FAA responsibility, air traffic control responsibility, is keep separation on the objects in the sky. Keeping airplanes from flying into each other. And if the object was close enough to worry the pilot, was it coming at them? Was it pacing him? What was it doing?
Well, it was pacing him, but the radar files or tapes indicate that the object was 12 miles away. That's pretty far. And the object, as seen on the radar scope, has kind of a strange behavior. The radar scope shows a cluster of objects, 3 to 5 objects, or 1 to 3 objects, something like that, darting around and sometimes clumped together and exhibiting a very inexplicable behavior. And the radar analyst who looked at these tapes, a fellow named Puckett, said it was most curious. He couldn't come up with any logical explanation for what would cause those kind of radar returns. He ruled out anomalous propagation. He ruled out another aircraft. He ruled out drones and all this kind of stuff. He said it could be a single object that was turning on its axis so that the corners of the object, different portions of the object, were reflecting the radar rays. It obviously didn't have a transponder. He could not explain it at all. That description of the radar seems to be a little bit at odds with the pilot apparently reported a large orange square of some type in the air at some distance from his aircraft. It seemed to be kind of close, but we don't have too much of the radar, of the pilot's conversation. He wasn't verbose, and we don't even have his name, so we can't follow up with an interview on him. But nonetheless, that's how matters shake out there. And there seems to be part of the conversation with the pilot that has been redacted from the tapes, and this is something that Puckett could only determine from looking at the physical tapes he got and running them through a computer. He saw remnants of an earlier conversation, that part of the conversation wherein the pilot asked the traffic control center whether they were picking up an object on radar, and that part has been deleted. So our only knowledge of that has come from this ham radio operator. So a bit of a complicated case, but yet it seems something kind of odd occurred there over the skies above Utah there in January.
Well, I guess the thing that strikes me, as I said, is you've got an object on radar that is around a commercial airliner And it seems as if the radar operators aren't too concerned about it, even though, I mean, if it's 12 miles away and it's really not moving toward the aircraft, I mean, it's not that much of a danger, but still, I would think that would be some kind of a problem that they have. Especially, I would imagine the aircraft was at cruising altitude, 35,000 feet. And
yeah, the object, it was at 31,000.
And the object was at the same flight levels, basically the same flight level, below or above the airplane?
Yeah, the radar doesn't have an altitude altitude range associated with it. Some radars do. This particular one didn't. Puckett was telling me in a conversation, and that's been true for a long time with about a lot of radars. At least the radar was about 100 miles away from the aircraft, and it wasn't picking. It couldn't tell what the altitude was above the ground of the unexplained signals. But the pilot indicated, the ham radio operator who was listening to the pilot indicated that as time went on, the pilot was getting more agitated with his requests and in his conversation, and he wanted to know what that thing was, and he did indicate that it was pacing or seemed to be, following his along with his aircraft.
So the pilot was quite becoming concerned about the object in the air with him.
Exactly right. And but the sighting first occurred about 12:05 a.m. I think it was on the 14th of January, and it basically ended at about 12:30, half an hour later. And that's the envelope of the for the request of data that Puckett asked for. He asked for any data between 12 and 12:30, and so we don't know if something happened, say, at 12:45.
Wouldn't the FAA be required to report this? This
I honestly don't know. Yeah, I honestly don't know, Kevin. So I hesitate to say they should be or not. You would think they would be extremely concerned about what was seen up there. Now, some people said, well, something was burning on the ground, and the pilot saw something burning on the ground, like a field or a controlled burn or something like that. But bear in mind, it was illegal to have controlled burns, at 12:30 in the morning, and moreover, it's a desert territory underneath the aircraft. There are no extensive fields of brush and trees and vegetation. And the investigators went out and drove around that area that corresponded to where the pilot had been above, and didn't find any burned fields. And they combed through newspapers, didn't find reports of the fire department being called out. So when all is said and done, we're left with an unexplained sighting not too far from an aircraft.
But what's more important, they're saying, well, it was fire on the ground, but it was seen on the radar. So when was the last time a fire on the ground was seen on the radar?
Exactly. And the fact that the radar was about 100 miles distant from the aircraft, again, rules out anomalous propagation. A lot of anomalous propagation. Not all of it occurs fairly close to where the beam emanates from the transmitter. And then the beam can pick up stuff on the ground and buildings and traffic and stuff like this. But 100 miles out, the beam is pretty far above the ground, and the aircraft was at 31,000 feet. And some of this radar can pick up smoke and stuff like that, and weather radar can. And there was no indication on weather radar that any smoke or anomalous propagation was being recorded.
Well, speaking of weather radar, there's weather radars in the cockpit of the aircraft. Did he see anything on his radar? Was there any conversation that would have led to that conclusion?
There's no conversation on that. If he was picking up anything, he apparently didn't voice these concerns to the ground.
And if he didn't done that, then the ham radio operator who was listening in wouldn't have heard anything like that. No,
he didn't report that either. No, he did not report that either, which would have been a significant thing in the case investigation. But no, that didn't come out at all.
I know in some UFO sightings, the cockpit radars do pick up the objects. With the Japanese JAL 1628, I think it was,
mm-hmm.
they had indications on their cockpit radars that something was close by.
Yeah, we're really hamstrung here because we don't know the identity of the pilot. And in fact, the pilot didn't even identify himself to air traffic control when he first called. The air traffic control had to actually ask him, interrogate him, who are you? What's your name? I know they were picking up a transponder reading, but they actually had to ask him, who are you and what flight is this, before he said something.
Well, did he give
just said flight number? He didn't give his name.
I was going to say, that was what I was going to ask. Did he just respond with the flight number?
No, we just know the flight number.
And there's no way to trace. There was no way to trace the pilot from the flight number.
Apparently not. Again, I haven't been in contact with the investigator per se. I talked to the radar fellow here, Puckett, but apparently they were not able to do that because that would have yielded a lot of information. But they haven't been able to get his name. I know the flight number, but that's about it.
The airline company, is not responding with his name, or have they? What kind of response have they gotten from the airline?
Yeah, I don't know on that one, Kevin. It's not indicated in the write-up on the case. All I know is Puckett was saying it's too damn bad. We can't get the name of the pilot because then we could get a lot more information on this case. But yeah, it's just not available to us. I'm sure they've tried and they've gone as far as they can, but it's American Airlines Flight 434, and that's as good as it gets.
Well, now we know what airline to stay away from. Their pilots see UFOs. No, I shouldn't say that. That was me.
Or if you want to see a UFO, you take American Airlines.
But I mean, that's kind of the response you get from a lot of people too. Is, well, the pilots are up there seeing UFOs. Can we trust that airline? And that's an outgrowth of the entire UFO field from back in 1947. And the one thing, and I think I've mentioned it on the show before, that one of the newspaper in 1947, after the first of the wave of UFOs were reported, flying saucers were reported, said the flying saucers are flying discs seen in 38 states except Kansas, because Kansas at the time was a dry state, and so you didn't have the drunks out there seeing bizarre. Well, I'm sure you were familiar with that one as well. You said something about drones. Is there problems with drones now being reported as UFOs?
Yeah, obviously there are. You can only imagine that there's a gazillion of these crazy drones out there in all different sizes and shapes that people are flying around. They're obviously not flying them, or at least amateurs like I would be, are not flying them at 31,000 feet. But yeah, I think that's proving to be a problem for MUFON and for investigative UFO groups, no doubt.
And movie footage or video footage, pictures of drones in the distance that causing trouble?
Yeah. Invariably they do, Kevin. One of the problems with the MUFON system is we do get an awful lot of pictures and videos and phone video and other video, and man, a lot of it really hasn't improved in quality since the 1950s. And you know what I'm talking about. A blurred light in the sky, or just a light with nothing around it to show context in a black sky. We're still getting all those kind of things, only more of them.
Well, we're going to have to take a quick break here because we're coming up against the bumper here. When we come back, we will talk a little bit more with Rob SWIATEK about what is going on with MUFON and hoaxes and photographs and that sort of thing. And for more information, take a look at www.kevinrandle.blogspot.com. And for those of you who are interested, take a look at the xzbn.net on your computer, and you'll get some good information there as well. We will return shortly.
This is the X-Zone Broadcast Network, broadcasting worldwide on broadcast affiliates and satellite program providers, including CNN Broadcast Network, Sirius Satellite Network, Star Media, Good News Radio Network, Angel Broadcast Network, Wiki Broadcast Network, and WPBN TV. For more information on the X-Zone Broadcast Network, visit us at www.xzbn.net.
Did you know that when you're on the road with limited data or Wi-Fi, you can still listen to the X-Zone Radio Show with Rob McConnell, The Science of Magic with Gwilda Wiyaka, X-1, Dimension X, Space Patrol, and every minute of the X-Zone Broadcast Network by calling 213-401-0080, courtesy of Audio Now. No smartphone, app, or internet needed. It saves your data plan, and it's free if you have unlimited minutes. Call 213-401-0080 to listen on any phone, anytime, anywhere. Remember 213-401-0080 for the best of the paranormal, parapsychology, and sci-fi radio programming anywhere, 24/7, 365.
I am Dr. Carl O'Helvey, founder, president of a new cancer foundation focusing on evidence-based physical, mental, and spiritual interventions, including natural cancer cures, prayer, meditation, affirmations, nutrition, and other related holistic cancer prevention and cure modalities. These are used in cancer education, research, and financing care. I ask for your help to continue this important work by donating at www.holisticcancerfoundation.com.
Wouldn't you love to know the secret to everything? Well then, meet Dr. Kimberly McGeorge and her cutting-edge breakthrough knowledge that combines science with possibility. Dr. Kimberly brings real-life answers and healing to those open to alternative solutions. She teaches solution-based programs and classes that will change all areas of your life forever. Specializing in conscious creation, intuitive readings, and energy medicine, you can rapidly shift health, relationships, business, and money and abundance challenges quickly. Receive her best-selling book, Secret to Everything, at no cost by going to secrettoeverything.com/X-Zone. That's right. Transformation can start now. Just go to secrettoeverything.com/X-Zone and receive Dr. Kimberly's book for free.
What Happened in Benghazi is revealed by Nicholas Genix, author of Obama, Islam, and Benghazi. He informs the American people that President Obama deceived them by advocating a strong foreign policy prior to the 2012 presidential election, and Hillary Clinton supported this deception. As the title infers, there is a connection between Obama, Islam, and Benghazi. Ample evidence informs Americans that Obama's early indoctrination in the Quran developed an affinity for Islam, why the Quran is the source of discontent in many countries, and why the Obama foreign policy deception led to poor military action and caused the loss of American lives in Benghazi. Genix provides 36 questions for the Select Committee on Benghazi to validate if Americans are justified to mistrust President Obama and Hillary Clinton. An overview of Obama, Islam, and Benghazi is presented on the website www.futureofgodamen.com. That's www.futureofgodamen.com. You're listening to the X-Zone Broadcast Network, www.xzbn.net.
And we are back with Rob SWIATEK, who's on the board of directors at MUFON. And for those of you who are interested in more information about what we're talking about, in these cases, you might take a look at the MUFON website. Just type MUFON.com into your search engine. It'll come up, and you can see what's going on with them. And you can also take a look at www.kevinrandle.blogspot.com. So we are back with Rob, and he was going to, I had some questions in mind, but he mentioned while we were away that he had a case that was quite interesting. So I'm just going to throw it to him and let him chat about that. Rob, you got the floor.
Okay, thanks, Kevin. Please break in with any questions if I get too confusing or something. I had a bunch of cases, but this is a good one because we're short on time, as always in life. And this is a case that occurred in April of 2016 over a place called Grove City, Ohio. And the case took about 2 minutes in duration. There was a witness on the ground, and after I describe this case, and it can be done fairly quickly, I'll tell you about the really interesting correlation I found in a much earlier case, which at least to me was sort of blew my mind. But anyhow, the witness was outside at about 7:15 or so in the evening and saw what was described as 3 to 5 dark-colored circles moving from north to south, and the witness thought they were perhaps 15,000 feet high in the sky. But they moved as a group along a straight line north to south. But the odd thing was that as these objects, he said they were dark circles, who knows if they were discs or whatever. They weren't rings, they were dark and circular. And as they went along, they would form a pattern. And it began as a circle, and then the objects rearranged themselves into an arc, then into a V shape, then into an open triangle, then a wing, and then it came full circle, no pun intended, back to a circle again. But the interesting thing was that when these objects formed into these patterns, they did so instantaneously. There seemed to be no connection between the circles, one with another. There were no lines seen, or the solid structure was not seen. The witness could see the sky between the objects. And in a split second, the objects would go from, say, the circle to the triangle, or the triangle to the wing. So you could not see the objects move between them. And he said it was like between the patterns. And the witness said it was like someone threw a switch on, and the objects would rearrange themselves. And eventually they just vanished into the distance, actually headed toward a storm, a line of storm clouds or something like that in the south. But nonetheless, very, very puzzling sighting. Now let's go 62 years back in time, if you will. And I came across this sighting from some records I had from Richard Hall, who used to be the chairman of the Fund for UFO Research and a good friend of mine and a legendary UFO researcher. Kevin knows well of whom I speak. And this was notes that Richard made on a case that occurred on August 1st, 1952 over Albuquerque, New Mexico in the evening. And a fellow saw about 10 glowing white objects moving across the sky, and these 10 objects were clustered together. At first, he didn't see that they had any pattern to them, and they were headed north. And as he watched, these lights shifted to a perfect V in a very precise manner, and then a few seconds later, they formed a new pattern. It happened to be 2 rows, parallel rows or something like that, with one row fitting in the gaps of the other row, and it moved across the sky like this. And the witness said their shifts in position were incredibly swift and fantastically violent. And so here we have the same object, the same phenomenon occurring 62 years before the one in Grove City, Ohio, where a person saw, okay, it was the lights in one case, it was dark circles in another. One was late at night, one was early in the evening. But here the objects are switching instantaneously, seemingly, from one pattern to another. And I just found that to be completely fascinating. And the witness said they made a flying saucers believer out of me with respect to the Albuquerque, New Mexico case. And an article on this case appeared in a newspaper at the time. So that's how we know about this case. But anyhow, here we have one of those very, very interesting correlations that sometimes occurs in ufology, where this is not a mundane sighting. It's a kind of a complicated sighting. And yet, I'm in my own mind, I'm convinced that these two people saw the same objects.
Well, you're saying the same object,
there, Kevin?
Well, the same
object.
Yeah,
the same type of object. Let's put it that way.
I was going to say, or a group of objects from the same source.
Right.
Objects from the same source doing the same sort of maneuvers.
Are there not the actual object? Don't get me wrong there, but no, it was just
okay.
I see that it only takes a couple cases like this before you realize that you don't need complicated Roswell-type incidents. You only need a few cases like this to realize that something really is going on that's inexplicable in our skies.
Well, here's one thing that's always kind of, I've always kind of wondered about. We have lots of pictures of flying saucers, UFOs, but we really don't have pictures that match one another, taken at different times in different locations by different people. Can you think of a case where we've got virtually the same sort of object a picture taken at widely separated times, in widely separated locations?
No, I really can't. Well, actually, I can sort of. Wow, you came out of the blue with that question, and there were a series of photographs taken, and in one case, a video, where an object was described as looking like a sphere with a square ring around it. And one of these cases was taken, I think, over Budapest, and another one was taken I want to say it was in Hawaii or something. I think it was a video that Bruce Maccabee looked at. But in each case, it was a sphere with a square ring. And one was taken over Kauai in Hawaii, a series of photographs. And then we had a video from Japan that showed a sphere with a square ring. So in these 3 or 4 cases, scattered over time and space, we have almost exactly the same objects pictured in the photographs.
Which would suggest if you were a hoaxer, you wouldn't be picking that kind of a weird object to a hoax. You'd pick something that would be a bit mundane, like you see in the TV movies, or the I shouldn't say TV movies, the movies Earth versus the Flying Saucers type thing.
Exactly. And some of these cases were multiple witness cases. They were pretty good, but virtually unknown to the field of ufology as a whole. You'd have to do a lot of work to find out where these cases are in the UFO journals and in the files.
Well, I can help on one of them. I think the Hawaii case was actually featured in official UFO magazine in the 1970s. It was on the cover of the magazine, and you've got the palm trees and the hula girls and all of that. I don't remember the issue, but I remember the object, and I think that's the one you're talking about. So
yeah, I think actually it's a different one. Because I sometimes vacation in Kauai, and the hotel where this object was photographed, I think it was photographed in like 1980 or something, or maybe in 1970, whatever. But yeah, it was. It doesn't show palm trees because the object had a high vertical elevation above the horizon, and color photographs were taken. I think a couple of them were taken, but yeah, I know exactly where in Hawaii that was because I've been in that actual little hotel. It's still there, and it's an inexplicable kind of a case. The photographs are quite good, actually. They're fairly clear, and Maccabee did a good investigation of the case, and just drew a blank at the end of it.
And for those who are interested, Bruce Maccabee is a physicist who worked for the U.S. Navy for a period of time. Well, for his career, actually. So that's Dr. Bruce Maccabee, and you can find him by searching the web and that sort of thing. If you are interested in more information about who Dr. Maccabee is and what his research has shown over the years. We got just a couple of minutes left here, and I just wanted to ask you one quick question. Are hoaxes causing you guys a lot of trouble?
Yeah, they pose a problem, and it's something that all the investigators are cognizant of. They do find that hoaxes to be a relatively small percentage of the cases. The Air Force always found they were around 3 to 5%. I don't know what the MUFON percentage of cases being a hoax is, but I think it's in that same ballpark.
Let me rephrase the question.
That's a problem.
Let me rephrase the question for you. Hoax videos that show up on YouTube, are those causing trouble?
Only if someone submits them to the CMS system, where then somebody really has to look into them. To be honest with you, and to be frank, the photographic cases are a big problem for MUFON, hoaxes as well as genuine ones, because we don't have enough photo analysts to go through literally, I would probably think several hundred a year. And we have a fellow named Mark D'Antonio, but he has a regular job. He can't spend full time looking at these things. And there aren't too many qualified people who can sit down and parse these sightings to say, oh, this is a hoax, this is maybe genuine. But I can say that the quality of a lot of them that I've looked at is people just sort of shove anything under the transom, and some of them are pretty bad. Like it's just a smudge of light in a dark sky, and it could be a genuine UFO, whatever the UFOs are, but there just isn't enough information to work on, and they sort of just use up a lot of time, and that's the problem with these. There aren't a lot of really great, clearly obviously unidentified cases out there in terms of photographs.
So MUFON doesn't have somebody.
There were.
MUFON doesn't have somebody trolling YouTube looking for the videos that are thrown up there almost on a daily basis to see if any of those things.
Yeah, you've got to fill out your case management form if you're a witness, and put in a bunch of information: where you saw it, what time it was taken, who you are, how you can be contacted. So it's not the easiest thing in the world to just put an anonymous thing up there. And I'm not so sure that they'll assign an anonymous case to investigators. There has to be a point of contact so you can interact with the witness and interview him or her.
Well, Rob, we've just run out of time here. I want to thank you for coming on to the program and sharing your information with us about what's going on in 2016 and that sort of thing. And we will be back next week with Robert Schaefer, who is a skeptic of UFOs and that sort of thing. And for those of you who want more information, take a look at www.kevinrandle.blogspot.com and take a look at the MUFON website if you want to learn more about UFOs. We will return in 167 hours with a new program. Thank you for dropping by.